We have updates on the Joe Rogan story. The story has been...
Oh, he issued another apology video.
Correct. Let's get into this.
So basically what happened, everybody went through, because this is what happens when they try to cancel somebody, and they're scouring his videos and looking for some reason to get Joe Rogan to shut up because they don't like the truth that he is revealing. And so they're trying to find a way to cancel him. And so they go through and they, I guess what had happened is in the past, there were several podcast episodes, some I think are like 10 years old, where he was using the N-word in a descriptive, illustrative context to explain something that somebody else had said. And it was many different times where he was discussing this and pointing things out. And so people put together a compilation video of him just saying the N-word and no context. So it makes him look like he just freely throws the word around. And they're saying, that's a cancelable offense. And what I find interesting about this, especially Howard Stern, who is on video in actual blackface, saying racist things, was one of the guys that was saying that Joe Rogan should be canceled. A guy like that, as the old saying goes, those that live in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones. Howard Stern is a fucking hypocrite, and he should shut his mouth, and he shouldn't open his mouth and call people racist when there's all kinds of video of him saying questionable things on camera and actually doing blackface. And that's what's so funny is a lot of these people that have come out and talked trash about Rogan have also been guilty of using the N-word. Like one of them was a guy that tweeted at The Rock saying he shouldn't be supporting Joe Rogan because he's a racist. And The Rock says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Now I've been educated. And that particular guy, we'll get to that part in the story. Apparently in his book, he uses the N-word a number of times. And so this is another guy that's running his mouth, calling somebody else a racist, and yet he's doing the same thing. But it's okay for him because his politics fit the narrative. It's fucking hypocrites.
So Joe Rogan has responded to a resurfaced clip of him using the racial slur almost 24 times while hosting his popular podcast. He called the clip the most regretful and shameful thing I have ever had to talk about publicly, insisting the video consisted of out-of-context snippets from 12 years of conversation.
Personally, I don't think he should have been apologizing for that. Because at the end of the day, when you apologize to the rage mob, it's never enough. They want you canceled. They want you gone. And weakness only invites more aggression. And so even though he gave that apology, it wasn't enough. Everybody wanted, even the calls for more cancellation, with Neil Young and all these other people, constantly crying about it. It's just now they think that they're going to be able to cancel him because he backed up. First, he was okay with a disclaimer on his videos. Potential COVID misinformation. I think Spotify was going to start putting on the clips that he talked about. I think it was Dr. McCullough. Yeah, Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone. And then now he's got his apology video, and it's not enough. You cannot display weakness to these people because they will not stop until either you stop them or they destroy you.
You did say he shouldn't apologize, but Rogan claims it would only be within the context of the conversation. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. So he was trying to explain his side. Now we have different celebrities who are coming forward with their thoughts on the Joe Rogan's actions, while acknowledging that social media footage can be doctored and or taken out of context. Grammy Award-winning singer India Ari argued that he shouldn't even be uttering the word. Don't even say it. Under any context. Don't say it. That's where I stand. I have always stood there. And we get into a headline, according to The Hill, after initially tweeting in Rogan's support, Dwayne Johnson apologizes, claiming he was not aware of Rogan's use of slur.
And also, this guy that was virtue signaling at him on Twitter, this Don Winslow jackass, didn't bother telling him the context of all these video clips because Don's a leftist, and leftists care about communism. It's a religion to them, and they only care about power and control and their side winning. And so everything's on the table with these people. It's win at all costs because he believes when communism prevails, socialism prevails, Marxist principles prevail, we'll have a much better society. And so Joe Rogan being sacrificed upon the altar of communism is okay. And so lying and through omission, by basically leaving out the context, and then he gets, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who obviously has no clue what's going on. Now he's backing up, apologizing after he just kissed ass and sucked up publicly, telling Joe Rogan he looks forward to coming on his show.
Getting into the Winslow. So with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, when he issued an apology over his initial support of Joe Rogan, saying he wasn't aware of the popular podcast host's use of racial slurs after the tweet from the novelist Don Winslow circulated on Twitter. In his tweet, Winslow said to The Rock, quote, "You are a hero to many people, and using your platform to defend Joe Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about using the racial slur dozens of times, is a terrible use of your power. Have you actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people? Question mark, end quote. And Dwayne Johnson replied, "Thank you so much for this. I hear you as well as everyone here 100%. I was not aware of his racial slur used prior to my comments, but now I have become educated to his complete narrative. Learning moment for me." End quote.
All media is narrative, and all Don Winslow did was create a narrative that was bullshit. And he shamed another famous guy publicly to backtrack so he could get Dwayne Johnson back on his side of the aisle. But Winslow was the guy I was talking about. In one of his books, he repeatedly uses the N-word. And, there's another guy that lives in a glass house throwing stones. So fuck Don Winslow. He's a fucking hypocrite. And probably a racist as well. Because only a racist goes around calling other people they don't know a racist. And so this guy is publicly saying Joe Rogan's a racist, and yet this guy is using racial slurs all throughout his books and pointing the finger at other people. So no one will ever do or say anything to you that isn't a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves in a moment. And so this guy's calling Joe Rogan, somebody who he doesn't know, a racist based on some video that he saw, and he doesn't care about the context. And it turns out that this guy Don looks like he's just projecting what's inside of him. The David Goggins quote.
Mm-hmm. We get into the support. So Rogan has support from many people. And former Navy SEAL David Goggins, who is African American, tweeted his support for Rogan. And he created an Insta post for it. We're going to check the
this
quote.
Is a great quote. And I'm going to read the whole thing because it's like David Goggins. It's like if you're into self-help and personal peak performance, he's a machine. And he's a good dude to listen to, a high character type of individual. So David Goggins says, "I've been attacked by a few people for being friends with Joe Rogan as of late. Funny, you must have mistaken me for someone who actually gives a fuck about your opinion. First, do I think Joe Rogan is racist? No. Was Joe wrong for saying the N-word? Yes. When I was growing up, even in my later years, I was called the N-word more times than I can count. It was never the N-word. It was the N-word. Obviously, I'm not going to say the word." He says, "That said, I know racist motherfuckers and can vouch for Joe. The fucked up thing about all of this is that all eyes aren't on Joe because of his use of the N-word, rather for his views on other matters. They are using race, which is real, emotionally charged, divisive subject, as a smokescreen for the real issue, and that is what pisses me off. If you have an issue with someone, let that issue be the issue. Don't hide it behind something else. These podcasts have been around for years, and no one has said shit about them until now because Joe's voice doesn't fit some agenda. If you don't walk lockstep with whatever the fuck is going on and don't agree with it, you risk someone going into the archives of your life and finding whatever dirt they can and exploiting you. We are slowly being walked down a path where we lose our voice. We don't all need to agree with one another, but we have to respect the fact that people should be able to say whatever the fuck they want to say, otherwise known as freedom of speech. Whether you listen or not should be your choice. I remain completely independent with no sponsors or partnerships, so I don't ever have to issue an apology for who the fuck I am or what the fuck I say. What the hidden message here to me is The fact that people in positions of power don't believe we are smart enough to be able to hear different opinions or capable of making our own decisions. All you judging motherfuckers, take some time and think about what would happen to you if all the skeletons in your closet were put on display for everyone around you to see. Perhaps you want to think again before rushing to judgment. It's important in life, whether people like it or not, for you to be who the fuck you are and say what you want to say 100% of the time. I think that perfectly encapsulated what's been going on, especially people like Howard Stern and this Don Winslow jerk off and all the rest of them. They've been exposed as a bunch of fucking hypocrites and scumbags that only care about power. One of my favorite quotes by George Washington goes along the lines of, "Truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains taken to bring it to light."
We move on with Spotify. So this headline is coming from Fox News. Spotify won't be silencing Joe Rogan amid controversy. The statement came from Spotify's CEO, as many people are calling on the platform to censor Rogan. Spotify will not be silencing Joe Rogan after a video compilation of him repeatedly using the racial slur surfaced this week. Quote, following these discussions and his own reflections, he chose to remove a number of episodes from his Spotify. He also issued his own apology over the weekend. He added, while I strongly condemn what Joe has said, I agree with his decision to remove past episodes from our platform. I realize some will want more, and I want to make one point very clear. I do not believe that silencing Joe is the answer. End quote. This is coming from the CEO of Spotify. So Spotify is supporting Joe Rogan. And then we move on to Rumble, who stands with Rogan as well. The headline says offered him $100 million over 4 years to bring his podcast to their platform.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty exists in the distribution of power, tyranny in the concentration of it. That was a paraphrase from a quote that Lord Acton said.